Before I get into this video, I want to provide something of a disclaimer for reasons you will understand shortly. This video is an experiment with something different. In one sense, because I don't really talk about movies all that much on this channel, but also because it's an experiment with a different kind of content. I wanted to do something a bit more relaxed and off the cuff, but rather than ramble to myself, I thought it would be fun to talk about Red 1 with someone else. Luckily, there is someone I have been bouncing ideas off from basically the inception of this channel, at least behind the scenes. With that in mind, this video is a bit rougher around the edges than what I normally put out. The commentary was kind of recorded on the fly, but if this proves to be something people find interesting, I might invest in a better setup to capture it in higher quality. So, with that out of the way, I present you with the review. So, we both watched the movie.
Mm-hmm. Some of us more than others.
Yeah, I watched it once. You watched it at least twice to get a better understanding of it. I kind of wanted to just give it one quick viewing and see what I could remember off the top of my head, like I was telling somebody that I had just seen the movie and trying to express to them what it was about.
Yeah.
My reading on this movie is that it's not incomprehensible, it's not terribly hard to follow, but it's just kind of boring and pointless. I didn't think it was that bad. You think it was worse, I think.
No, I don't think it was bad. I think it had a lot of bad aspects to it. Green screen and some of the acting and just the delivery of a lot of things. I think it was just, it's not what you would expect from the caliber of actor and actress that was in the movie.
And the production
budget.
Yeah, I felt as if it was what I expected, because I kind of saw The Rock playing an elf in a Christmas movie, and I kind of expected it to be...
Was he really an elf?
Was he an elf? I don't know.
Was he?
We don't know. He wasn't human, that was for sure.
That abundantly clear.
Do I look human?
The plot is pretty simple, and I'll go over what I can remember, and maybe you fill in some of the blanks, but we've got this beginning scene where there's a little kid, and he tells all of his friends, he brings them upstairs and shows them that the presents in the closet are actually bought by their parents, not brought by Santa.
Like I said, we're being played.
Then we flash forward, and I don't remember the exact order the scenes happened in, but we get like the hacking scene with or whatever.
That's right after.
Yeah, whatever.
That's 30 years later, immediate follow-up.
Chris Evans playing, embrace yourselves for this name, guys. Jack the Wolf O'Malley.
Looks like the wolf.
So he's playing some kind of super hacker / social engineer who's trying to get this secret information, and there's this ridiculous thing where he's running around, he's plugging his thing into computers and spilling coffee on stuff.
No, he doesn't plug it into the computer. He breaks into the National Oceanic Geological Administration, wherever the fuck it is. The NOGA. This movie loves acronyms. But he breaks in there and he doesn't plug anything into a computer. He doesn't do any click, clack, enhance, anything like that. He opens a panel up on the floor and he takes like a chip bag clip around the wires, and there's a USB cable plugged into this weird little clip thing with some zip ties on it, and that's how he gets the data.
Okay. I'll let the hackers out there, I'll play some of the clips and let you guys tell us if this was real hacking or not.
Yeah.
Wasn't there something else like the International Seismographic Survey or something that he uses to hack in?
We were just told that someone hacked the Intercontinental Seismic Surveillance System.
To find the North Pole?
Yeah, when the sled.
And then, like, after that, like, hacking scene, or whatever you want to call it, we get the scene where Dwayne, I'm not going to call him The Rock, Johnson, he's playing, I think they say it later, he's the head of ELF.
It's ELF.
Cow.
And ELF stands for, I believe, Enforcement, Logistics, and Fortification.
Enforcement, Logistics, and Fortification.
But what is it now to Chris Evans' character? It's extremely large and formidable.
So he is Santa's head of security, basically. Yeah. And I don't remember if that is also connected to that other thing, the MORA, which is like...
the Mythological Oversight and Restoration Authority.
It's like the BPRD from Hellboy, basically.
I think they're separate things, but they work in conjunction with protecting Santa and mythological creatures.
Yeah, and Lucy Liu, I think, plays the head of that organization, right?
Yes, she's a director.
So, The Rock... I called him Rock already. Fuck it.
You can't get away from it.
Yeah. Dwayne is the head of ELF security for Santa, who's played by J.K. Simmons. Yes. And in the beginning of this movie, he's handing in his resignation. And from what I recall, it's some like vague thing about how he thinks there's more naughty people than there've ever been before, and it's like ruining Christmas cheer.
Anymore. They're up 22% every year.
We're up almost 22% year over year.
I'm aware of the numbers, Cal.
Up 22%.
On the naughty list.
I don't know if that math makes any sense.
It doesn't.
No, you're getting into like orders of magnitude.
It's more naughty people on the naughty list than on the good.
For the first time ever, more people are on the naughty list than not.
Yeah, so he's gonna hand his thing in, and J.K. Simmons is like, "I need you to stay with me for the kids."
We work for the kids, Cal. We do it for them.
I love the kids.
I'm gonna call him Omni Santa because that's also he's playing, because he has superhuman powers, super strength. In addition to, I think they say that he burns like 43 million calories on Christmas Eve.
You know, I burn
You
about
burn 430 million calories every Christmas Eve, yes?
He has a list the size of Rhode Island.
And he reads it twice.
Yes. A normal person, it would take them decades. That's another piece of dialogue from later on in the movie.
He has a list the size of Rhode Island, and he checks it twice.
Basically, I think what happens next is Santa and Dwayne go their separate ways. There's the breach at the North Pole, which is, it's fucking Wakanda.
Exactly.
It's a super city. It's Mega City 1.
This is one of the things that bugged me, like, for this, is they found out where Wakanda was, the North Pole, because Chris Evans was tracking the ISSS, is what Lucy Liu calls it, later on. I'm not going to try to remember the whole thing.
The Intercontinental Seismic Surveillance System.
And they, like, break the barrier, and some satellite picks it up, or whatever it is. Why did they need him to find it? Why didn't they just go to the North Pole and start flying their drones and jets and whatever around?
The only thing I could think of is that, like, it's something like Hogwarts or whatever, and there's some kind of magical Santa field around it or something.
It's under a special dome that normal people are walking around, you bump into it, whatever.
So then Dwayne the Elf Johnson, he goes and he's trying to chase Santa because they've figured out he's been taken, and he chases this like snowcat through the winter.
Just trying to leave me
he chases his truck down, and it turns out to all be like a red herring because Santa's not in this truck, and then we don't know where Santa is. And while this is all happening, Dwayne's being like basically a meta-human like he is in every movie. He's got like the Ben 10 wrist
how
thing.
did you refer to him? He's a large muscular guy who is an amputee. Large muscular guy fighting a gorilla.
Large muscular guy who may or may not be an elf. We don't know. That's another thing they mention when Callum Drift is the character's name. When he is like trying to hand in his letter of resignation to Omni Santa, he says you need somebody young in their prime, like 300 years old, I think. So
You need somebody younger, someone 300 years old in their prime.
we don't know how old Dwayne is. He's centuries at least. It doesn't seem to slow him down at any point.
We find out later on. Well, we find out how old he is at least.
Okay.
And
I don't remember that.
He's at least 542 years, because that's either his age or how long he's been working for Santa as his head of security.
After 542 years.
Anyway, after they can't find Santa because he's been taken somewhere else, they go back to like the base, and then they talk to Lucy Liu, and she's like, there's only one way this could have happened. There's only one man who could have cracked the ISSS or whatever, and it's Jack the Wolf O'Malley.
Who the hell is the wolf?
Mercenary, bounty hunter, works for the highest bidder, a ghost on the dark web.
And then we get like the follow-up scene with him where he's just drunk in a bathtub, passed out. And that's where we get like the second instance of really bad product placement. The first one is, I think, earlier when it's those weird elf goblin guys.
Yes.
But it's the Wise Chips thing.
It's immediately after the Wise Chips thing.
There's like some really blatant product placement in this movie, like Wise Chips and then Bullet whiskey or bourbon, I forget which one it is. But it's like literally the camera pans straight from like the bottle of liquor over
Tony Maloney's Pizza Box, which is a place in
a real
New
place.
Jersey.
And then it pans over to Evans sleeping off his drunken drunken escapades in a bathtub. Again, I don't remember exactly the order of events. Does he talk to his wife or his ex-wife first, or does he get chased down? Because it's really like
talks
all
to
together.
his ex-wife first. Then he has a child.
Yeah, his ex-wife is the waitress from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, by the way, and I will only refer to her as that.
The waitress from Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a labor and delivery doctor.
Okay.
And she has 3 patients that are, laboring hard. It's going to be a while. So he has to just be a dad and go pick his son up.
Yeah, his son, who is, I don't know what
racially
ethnicity he
ambiguous
is.
And looks like an adult woman.
Well, whatever, but it's a little confusing when you watch the movie. Then we get, he's going to, break in somewhere to find something else, because that's his whole thing, right? He's a finder, basically.
Anyone, anywhere, anything.
He's probably the best tracker in the world.
But apparently, he's also very easy to find. Because Lucy Liu's people, they catch him while he's trying to break into this place, and then...
No, they don't. They don't catch him when when he's breaking into a place. I believe he goes back to his apartment, because he tells the labor and delivery doctor...
The waitress.
The waitress from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He tells her when he arrives at their house, or her house, and he's like, I gotta go to work. I can't do this right now.
I gotta go to work.
His work is just finding things, hacking things, whatever. So then Lucy Liu...
He goes back to his apartment.
Yeah.
And he notices that people are following him. He sees someone in his apartment, or whatever this apartment is, and he just gets into a fight. And
with 9 people.
Yeah, and like we talked about, and we said would happen beforehand, sheer dumb luck, he would be able to kind of fight these guys and get the upper hand on them.
But then he gets tasered by Lucy Liu personally with the little stun gun that freezes you. And he's brought back to the Nora or the Mora place. That's where we get the first meetup between Jack O'Malley and Callum Drift.
But this is after they walk him through the warehouse, wherever this place is, and he sees different kind of mythological things, like the Headless Horseman.
It very much feels like a Hellboy situation. Oh, here's this whole organization dedicated to mythical creatures, but it's brushed over so quickly.
Yes.
You barely have a chance to comprehend it. And then there's Callum Drift and a giant polar bear named Garcia. Like an anthropomorphic polar bear. And they have this back and forth where you find out that Evans is a quote-unquote level 4 naughty lister.
A level 4 naughty lister?
Oh, is that funny to you?
And they're doing an interrogation on him, basically, because they think he knows something about where Santa is, even though he doesn't. He's just sort of a middleman.
Yeah, Callum's not willing to accept that he doesn't actually.
He doesn't know.
I don't know.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he's just given information to someone else.
Something that I thought was funny about this was when The Rock, first walks in, he's like, where is he?
Where are they?
And Chris Evans goes, he says, I quote, I'm not gonna like you. I can tell right away, out of everyone here, I'm gonna like you the least. Which the tone of his voice felt so honest and personal.
Yeah, that to me is also I feel it's the first part of the movie where we get to see that Chris Evans is kind of playing a half-baked Ryan Reynolds role almost. He's snarky, but it never quite goes into that full-blown Ryan Reynolds direction. It reminded me of
when I don't remember the name of the character, but from Blade, when he was being interrogated.
Oh yeah, I think he's Hannibal King or something in that movie.
Yeah.
I think that's that character's name.
I ate a lot of garlic, and I just farted.
It was very reminiscent of that, but with less charisma.
It feels like there was some desire to put something in there because The Rock he's such a nothing burger in this movie.
Yeah.
He has no personality. He's not necessarily doing a dramatic role, but it's so bland. It's a Christmas movie, and there's no Christmasing from him.
Except for the random
one-liners.
Good tidings.
It's to bring Christmas cheer, asshole. Something
We're
like that.
We're gonna save Christmas.
Yeah.
Say it.
Let's save Christmas.
We're gonna save Christmas.
Say it again.
Yeah. Basically, there's some of that stuff, a little bit of banter, but they just don't play off of each other well at all.
I think if Chris Evans had been replaced with a Sean William Scott or Johnny Knoxville type of character that The Rock had acted with before, or if The Rock was replaced with someone like Dave Bautista, or some other big wrestler guy who's funny.
Because it really seemed like The Rock just wasn't able to be comedic in this. He was just a stone wall. And he's playing, I think, a fucking elf.
It's ELF.
Cow.
Which, you gotta have some kind of humor there. It should have been I really thought maybe a guy like Mark Wahlberg. Because he could be a little buffoonish it's like, hey, I'm a fucking elf. You got a problem with that, you Vietnamese piece of shit?
Yeah,
Something like that.
It's weird to like try to expect or like understand that he might be an elf.
It's ELF.
Cow.
Because like there aren't specified elves anywhere else in this, or what you would think is a classical kind of elf. It's like gremlin, troll, goblin
trolls,
guys.
Goblins. Even down to like
at least give them pointy ears.
Yeah, even down to the outfit he's wearing. It's like this. It's red and green, but it's like muted red and green. It's like brown and like all it. Like they couldn't even commit to festive colors. And it's like the same with everything in the movie. It's dark, not like thematically. It's like visually like difficult to see a lot of stuff.
There were opportunities for it to be thematically dark that were just missed entirely.
Krampus.
Yeah, the Aruba beach scene with Nick Kroll.
Yeah.
That could have been really good, but he's awful.
He's terrible in that. It's just, he's doing something very weird I can't figure out.
Callum Drift.
Basically, they gotta track down whoever stole Santa, and I think Jack O'Malley, he basically says he keeps his records or whatever, and it was somebody in Aruba. And they go to Aruba, and this is like one of the only moments of Christmassy stuff, but it's also this level of like over-explaining they had to do, where they can travel through like a fucking webway portal from the North Pole to any toy store in the world.
Yeah. And then all portals in Toy Story, they're part of, there was another acronym, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, there's too many of them.
For the North Pole Field Network Transit System.
But all the, like, back, like, utility rooms of toy stores are connected on some interdimensional North Polean highway.
Warhammer 40K.
But something about their trip to Aruba, when they, take the Hot Wheels car that they zap up to be huge with the Rock special bracelet. That was one of the first, I think, scenes where I really noticed very poor green screen.
Yes,
and like dubbing
on the beach.
If you listen to it, you can notice a very like obvious change in the Rock's audio and the way that he sounds.
But he does it twice, and the reason why he's able to do any of it.
And you can see that it is not synced up quite right at certain points with like him actually speaking. So I think that was one of those things they filmed after the fact.
I think we talked about it right after we watched it, where it felt like a lot of the scenes in the movie were, again, bring up Blade, like it felt like they weren't on set on the same time, or at the same time or on the same day.
So many scenes, and not just ones with The Rock, like other ones too.
It makes sense when you consider some of the stuff that's been said about this movie and the production, where he was showing up 8 hours late. They can't always be waiting around for him, so they might just film some stuff just in case. The Aruba thing is also, I think, the part where, for me at least, you start to get some of these weird elements to it. Like, and there was one part of it that was, that's where you get the Carmenian death merc scene.
He's a Carmanian death merc.
You get like this weird hinting at something with Chris Evans' character, where he says he can read people.
I see the worst in everyone, Cal.
It's my gift.
And it reminded me of something like just previously said, which is like that Santa has these abilities and he can sense things.
He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
I had this feeling that they were going to do something with the script where Chris Evans ends up working for Santa or replaces Santa or something because he has some innate ability. But it's picked up and then just totally brushed aside, because he like follows these guys. He said, look at those guys and those shoes, and this guy's clearly a bad guy.
They're wearing shoes on the beach. Who would do that besides us?
Yes. And then there's the scene where they meet up with Nick Kroll, they don't meet up with him, they follow these guys to him, and Callum's going to start this fight, and Chris Evans says, you don't want to get in there, those are Carmenian death mercs.
Remember when I said they're called death mercs?
And it just felt so fucking out of place for the rest of the language of this movie.
Also, did we ever confirm that is Carmenia or wherever a place? Did we confirm that, or it's just like
the only thing I found?
Region?
Yeah, the only thing I found was some kind of Wattpad fan fiction story about the daughter of Red One. It's just bizarre, and so Callum Drift jumps in and fights these mercenaries, and it's one of the only scenes in the movie where I really thought was interesting. It is kind of copying like something from those Ant-Man movies, but he can get really tiny, he can get really big.
It's just a Marvel movie.
Yeah, he can beat people up and be really strong. It was interesting, but like it's one of the only times they do something like that. But then they get to talking to Nick Kroll's character, I forget what his name is, and he's like, you got
Ted
the information.
Or something.
Ted. We'll call him Ted. They talk to Ted and they're like, we need to know who asked you for this information about Santa. And he says, I can't say it because she'll hear me. And they're like, write it down. And he writes it down. And Chris Evans' character immediately reads the name.
Grilla?
You idiot!
Gryla?
So when you say her name, she knows where you are and can find you, and then immediately possesses Nick Kroll.
Yeah.
And it's like this goofy scene, but it's one of the only goofy scenes in the movie, and it feels so out of place.
Everyone I see fit!
But then basically she sends her snowmen like henchmen.
Snowmen are summoned out of the ocean.
Yes.
In an ice cream van in Aruba.
In Aruba.
Yes. They're these big like ice golem things. They look very cool.
And it's an interesting idea. And the way that they beat them is a bit silly, but like you yank the carrot out of their nose and then they melt or turn into a slushy snow on the ground. But like with so many of these things, it just feels like another thing that was just added for, here we got to have an action scene. It's been 15 minutes. Nothing has happened. We just been having these two characters boringly talk to each other.
And this is one of the first instances where Chris Evans absolutely should have died.
Yes.
He is fighting a snow golem by himself, and he is in like a tiki hut bar thing, lit grill. He's fighting this thing. He undoes the propane tank, or just finds one laying around, stabs it with an ice pick somehow. He throws
Do you know the amount of force you would need to do that?
He's Captain America. Stabs it with the ice pick, throws it at the ice golem who's on the other side of the grill. He jumps over the opposite end of the bar and manages to grab a bottle of some type of liquor, throw it at the snowman, and it explodes and just launches him into a pool. How he didn't die, I don't know.
Yeah, the fight scene earlier in the movie, you could at least, make the excuse that he's a really good fighter. But this is like him physically contending with a supernatural being and doing like
a propane tank
Tom Cruise shit.
6 feet away from him.
He should be deaf, if nothing else. So then some other bullshit happens.
Nick Kroll gets frozen. Thank God.
He dies, I guess?
No, they're thawing him out, but he's not going to be, like, helpful, they said.
Even if he didn't die of, like, being, like, frozen like you would in a lot of movies where you shatter on the ground, like, he still got suddenly frozen solid. His entire molecular structure is going to be damaged.
Frozen, so he's fine.
And this is one of those points where I can't remember, like, point A to point B. What happened next? This is, like, a blank spot for me.
You said that, and I just completely forgot. This is where the lead into Krampus. So they have the crime scene cleanup and the tech team come in, and they throw down another acronym, the UDMs, which I don't remember what it is.
Unauthorized deployments of magic.
But basically they're tracking the Grilla, they're tracking her magical activity, and they see that she had recently been in Germany. Grilla was in a relationship with Santa's brother.
Adopted
brother. We don't know by who or when or why. And we don't know his name yet. That's kept a surprise until we're in Germany.
Yeah, like, who could possibly be the parents of Santa and the Krampus? Maybe somebody out there who knows more about mythology knows that, but isn't, like, Santa, like, Saint Nicholas? So, like...
Does he even have parents? Is he adoptive brother in the sense, like, he took Krampus under his wing?
Yeah, are they brothers like Dagestanis refer to each other? Yeah. Like, I mean, and then Grilla's, the Krampus's ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
Grilla, by the way, is played by...
Kiernan Shipka.
Yeah, Kiernan Shipka.
Sabrina the Witch.
Sabrina the Christmas Witch is what we'll call her. And they're going to go, like, confront the Krampus or sneak into his, like, compound because he's got this big castle. And while they're sneaking around, this is another one of those weird moments from the movie where there's hellhounds there for some reason, and Callum Drift has to distract them, so he has like a magical chicken.
It's on his keychain that unlocks all the doors for the toy store
Makes
closets.
Perfect sense.
He uses his little special bracelet, and he turns the little rubber chicken toy into a real chicken whose name is Ellen, I believe. It's Ellen or Alan. I'm saying Ellen. And she goes and she distracts the hellhounds for a while he and Chris Evans traverse to Krampus's castle.
It is important to note that Callum's like weird wrist thingamajig, it does a lot of shit, but it can alter things' realities.
How did I adjusted it to reality?
So it can turn like a toy car into a real car. It can turn a rubber chicken into not a real chicken, but a chicken that can run at like 80 miles per hour and evade supernatural entities.
But Chris Evans is not allowed to use it on his penis or at all. That's what they implied. They're
sneaking around the Krampus's little compound, and because Chris Evans owes some debts to someone, I don't know if they're ever elaborated on.
Where's my money?
He tries to steal something out of one of the Krampus, a piece of gold out of one of the Krampus's like treasure chests. And that somehow alerts all the Krampus's guards.
Well, it's probably magical.
It's a booby trap, basically, and it lets the guards know. They come capture them. They put them in a little magical jail cell, and
which is absolutely green screened and was not shot at the same time. Even if you just look at like the lighting on The Rock versus Chris Evans, the way that like the light's direction is not going to change just because they're sitting in different spots. There's one point edit in particular where, you know how they'll have someone kind of in frame here, someone over here, and they're focused on this person that's way away.
It's one of those scenes where it does really look like it was composited. It
tries to focus off of Chris and onto The Rock, and it doesn't.
It could just be that The Rock's, like, he's looking particularly odd in this movie, like his skin texture and stuff.
Do I look human?
And then they bring him out of the jail cell to talk to Krampus, and Krampus is doing some kind of game. He's doing power slap with his little demons.
Dana would be so hard up watching this movie.
And they have some argument where they're like, tell us where Grilla is. They think Krampus is still working with Grilla, but he says he isn't. He says he used to love her, but then...
When she was an 18-foot tall
80, I think.
Ogre.
An ogre 18 feet high.
80?
I think 80, because when you see her later in the movie, she's like 80 feet tall.
No, she's not 80 feet tall. The Rock's like a third her height.
Nah, later, because Chris Evans gets hit with like a tentacle or something.
He lives.
But it's like the size of a cable for a suspension bridge. Listen. She looks enormous in the end of this movie.
She is. But I think she looks way bigger from certain angles, because I think they just couldn't decide on scale.
But it's also one of those parts of the movie that is just really like hard to see. It's all gray and blue and shit. But they want the Krampus's assistance. He doesn't want to give it to them, but he wants to keep Callum prisoner, I believe.
Drift belongs to me.
And they take away the little magical wrist thing, and at some point, I don't remember exactly how it happens, but Chris Evans is like, I think Callum can beat you in your slap fight here, your Krampus
he said
slap.
He could beat you, and he wants to fight you at Krampus Schlop.
Krampus Schlop. So they have a little slapping fight, and at first Krampus just bitch slaps Dwayne and throws him into a wall.
I did actually find when Dwayne gets punched or slapped, I did actually find that bit a little funny, because that's, I think, the one moment where we really see like some genuine change in emotion from him, like the fear and the concern by
that was Dwayne's
slapped.
fear in real life of looking weak from getting slapped across the room.
But just the getting hit and the like, I can't do this. He's a winter deity. Yeah. I'm gonna die.
That's like the one moment of weakness that was allowed in his contract. But then Chris Evans like steals the little wrist thing from somebody who was holding it while they're distracted, hands it to Callum Drift, and he slaps the shit out of the Krampus, and they escape. And then that's like where they get like the second utterance of the witch's name or whatever, right?
What do you think Greeley's trying to do? Is there any...
Yes, outside of Krampus's place. I do want to say, though, the special effects and, like, the practical ones and everything that were used on Krampus and several of the different, what's called them, party goers.
Yeah.
They were actual, like, prosthetics and makeup put on Krampus and everyone else, and they looked amazing.
They looked good, but to me they looked a lot like the dwarf costumes they would wear in the Hobbit movies.
Kind of.
Like
you
good.
could tell it was prosthetic-y, but it was still really cool looking.
It was good, but it wasn't like say the previous Lord of the Rings movie level prosthetics.
No.
You could tell the guy's wearing like a mask and he's like on a ladder, so he can be. That's another thing that took some guts from Dwayne to allow in the.
He let so many people be bigger than him in the movie, but he still was stronger.
He's still stronger
than them at the end of the day.
So then they escape the Krampus's compound. That's when Chris Evans, he touches one of those like snow globes.
Yeah, they're driving down the road in the woods, and the piano is just in the road. So they get out, and there's a present from Grilla on it. And right as they're opening this box up, they get a FaceTime call from his son. He's like, "Do you don't want to come to my music recital, Dad? Then don't send me stupid gifts, okay? I hate you." And they're like, "What are you talking about, stupid gifts?" And he turns the camera on or around, and it's one of these, the Galatian fig or whatever the fuck it's called.
It's a snow globe.
And they immediately say, "Don't touch it," which he does, and then gets sucked into it and sent off to wherever. So Chris Evans is like, "That's my kid.
I gotta save my son."
Save him. He grabs the orb. He says, "Find me," to the Rock.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
He's the guy who finds things. How is the Rock gonna find you?
Tables have turned.
And that's like when we got some like moments earlier where you get a little bit of Grilla's plan to like punish all of the naughty people, past, present, future somehow.
I will deliver one of these to every single deviant on the list.
But no explanation why.
No. She just doesn't like naughty people. There's going to be a reckoning, basically. And she's going to put all these people in these little snow globes, which are being powered by sucking the Christmas energy out of Santa Claus. And that's kind of one of those parts where he zoned out a little bit, because it feels so, it's convoluted. A lot of this is just...
No. You're so right, though. I found myself at the exact same point. Like, I caught myself the second time realizing I'm, like, zoning out at this point in the movie.
Yeah, it drags.
It does. It just feels weird and slow. I can't remember if Chris talking to his son, because they're in different snow globes, but conveniently next to each other on the same shelf, and whatever this tunnel is. They have a heart-to-heart. They talk. Chris promises he wants to do better. He wants to be better. He wants to love his son and be there. And then that is what breaks the orbs open and
the power of friendship.
Them. The power of friendship. It brings the orbs open, and they are fine. They're out. Whatever. Well, there's also a scene where The Rock is driving in the car. He's trying to get to whatever portal he needs to, and he's talking to Lucy Liu, and lets her know Chris has been captured. We gotta find him. I don't know what's going on. She says, I've been in contact with your team all night. And I totally blanked for a second.
Yeah. Also, isn't there something mentioned about how she put like a tracking device on him?
Yeah, that's part of it too, is she can't track him anywhere. And that's what makes them realize Santa was never taken out of the North Pole. He's still there. He's still under the dome.
Unless he never left.
But they also talk about The Rock's team, who's still at the North Pole.
The elf team?
Yeah, the elf team.
It's ELF.
Cal.
I still can't remember what it's called and what it stands for.
Enormous Loser Film.
Yep, I agree completely. Why so many acronyms?
I don't know. Egregious liberation of funds from the movie studio because The Rock couldn't stop pissing in Voss water bottles.
But he says, count me in or fucking connect me to my team. And he immediately realizes that it's not them. It's the witches' shape-shifting ogre sons, who there are 13 of. And he realizes this because he's talking to Mrs. Claus, who he calls codename Partridge. And he asks her what she's doing. She says, I'm making cookies for my husband. And he says, what kind? And she says, macaroons. And he's like, oh, that's nice. And then he...
Wait a minute.
And he ends the call and he says to Lucy Liu, that's not her. She's like, how do you know? Santa hates macaroons.
Nick hates macaroons.
Which I don't remember if that's touched on earlier in the movie or not.
I don't know either.
I don't think it is, but who knows?
It's also one of those moments where I genuinely don't know if it was supposed to be funny or if it was unintentionally funny.
It was unintentionally funny. It was meant to be completely, utterly serious. It was
that raises a lot of questions.
There was not a hint of humor involved.
The North Pole has been taken.
So they fight Grila's 13 shape-shifting ogre sons, and that's like one of the other like battles we got, because there's only like one or two like real fights.
Yes, this is after they've rescued Chris Evans' son, and then all of The Rock's team, which conveniently I believe there are like 13 of these people that end up fighting the 13 ogre sons.
So they liberate the team, and this big battle happens. It's one of the only moments, I think, where we get any action from Garcia, the giant polar bear. I don't know why he was in this fucking movie. I feel like they were going for, like, the Shark King guy from Suicide Squad or something like that. Like a big,
I could see that, yeah.
Big anthropomorphic brawler character. But he, like, smashes two guys' heads together, and again, that's
no blood.
No blood.
No, whatever. Yeah, maybe they're ogres, whatever. Nothing.
Not even green blood or something.
Nothing.
You got trolls and mythical characters. You hit them in the head, they a little blue blood comes out or something. They don't even use like the maxi pad commercial logic.
No. I will say though, I did briefly find the first interaction we have with Garcia a little funny when he refers to squeezing Chris Evans as the Thing.
Shall we do the thing?
Because it is one of those things. This movie is super duper surface level, and there's a lot of just like stuff that's just, again, brushed over, but you do get some occasional moments where it feels like they wrote a little bit of like a second layer underneath, and the sort of implied nature of Callum Drift and Garcia the polar bear having done this repeatedly and squeezing people. That is a little amusing, but there's so little of that in the rest of the movie. And then after this whole incident happens, they fight the ogres. I do not remember how they freed Santa.
So that comes at the end. Once they found out that Santa was being kept in the main tunnels below the original workshop that had just been, closed off. Things had been disabled since the 1800s or whatever. They end up realizing that Grilla is going to take the sled, and she's going to disperse her magic-sucking orbs all over the world with the sled.
Okay.
Sled won't take off without Santa. He has to be on it. So they go to the 28-mile-long Fast and Furious runway where the fucking sled takes off. This is one of the scenes where Chris Evans gets launched into chain links that are 4 feet fucking long.
Yeah.
And he doesn't die.
He gets bitch slapped by a giant ogre witch and just not a broken bone, not a cut on his forehead, nothing. Completely unscathed.
Yeah, they catch Grilla, they fight her. Callum tries to wake Santa up. It isn't working. So he goes on, he fights Grilla with Chris Evans, and they're getting the shit kicked out of them. Last minute, Santa wakes up.
That was something that I thought of while watching it, like the milk and cookies.
Yeah.
The milk and cookies. Give him the milk and cookies, but they didn't do that. He just wakes up on his own.
There may have been some mention of, you want a cookie or something to him, I don't know.
Yeah, but he just wakes up on his own.
He does. He wakes up and he calls back the reindeer.
Oh yeah, the giant 19-foot tall reindeer.
The chains that were binding the reindeer to the sled broke as they were trying to take off, and they just decided to leave. But then when Grilla falls off the bridge, she's turned back into her ogre self, who's like between 18 and 80 feet tall.
Yes.
He uses the special word that we still don't know if it's like an actual word or it's like a version of a word, but it's
some German shit.
Kavalame. And that summons the reindeers back. They're juiced up, their antlers are glowing, and they beat the fuck out of Grilla.
And then she falls backwards into a giant pile of the little
the reindeer
snow globes.
knock her into it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And then she gets trapped in her own little tiny eternal prison.
They needed 8 billion orbs to trap her in this thing because she was so tall. Also, did we mention that she's 900 years old?
She's actually a 900-year-old ogre with 13 sons who kill on command.
I don't know. Everybody in this is of some indeterminate age where I don't know. It's mentioned briefly and it's whatever. It's just one of these million things that's in this movie. So then Santa saves Christmas basically. You don't there's really nothing more that needs to be said about that. There's a quick montage of him shrinking down because they had to explain how Santa does Christmas, even though who gives a fuck?
I will say I did kind of having watched it again and going into it with a more observant kind of eye. I did kind of like that end scene where it's oh, we gotta shrink him down. We shrink down the presents. There's that airship that carries the drums of presents and stuff, and we give those back to the sled and we're flying around and we're doing it. I kind of liked that, having watched it a second time.
Maybe I'll like it if I watch this movie a second time, but watching it in real time, I was it's just we don't need to explain it.
It felt a bit pointless, having all this other shit happen.
And then there's the scene where Jack O'Malley and his son are hanging out or having another moment together on Santa's sleigh or whatever. And Callum Drift sees Jack as the child version of himself somehow, but it's accurate to, it's not metaphorical. He literally sees him as the child we see in the very beginning of the movie. But I guess the meaning of that is that we are supposed to see the children in everyone or something, and The Rock decides he's gonna stay on working with Santa again.
I knew you'd get it back.
It's just this sort of flat ending. It doesn't have any real greater meaning or appeal. It doesn't feel emotional.
Which, question, how did Chris and his child manage to basically time travel, hyperspeed travel on this sled? I don't know. As just mortal beings.
That's a question that I think that I had when I was watching it.
How are they not liquefied?
Yeah, he's traveling around at what has to be light speed, if not faster,
literally.
Or going through dimensions. It makes sense for Santa. We find out he is like a demigod, and Dwayne Johnson in real life is a metahuman. Yeah. So it makes sense for them. But these two humans, one of which is a child, just survive this. They explain so much else in the movie, but they just whatever with this thing.
So many things are left unanswered, just open-ended. It's what?
It's not one of those movies where I found myself asking what is happening, but more why.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Why was this movie made? It has these, in my opinion, really serious tonal issues where it can't decide whether it wants to be a children's movie. It can't decide whether it wants to be more of a slightly edgier, where it's like PG-13, but sort of the upper end maybe of PG-13. Yeah. This one is like, it's like just above PG somewhere, and just barely making it to PG-13.
Yeah, there's not a lot of swearing. There's a lot of almost swearing. Like, you do get an asshole from Rock, like he says that.
To spread cheer, asshole.
Chris Evans, I think, says, what the hell?
Yeah.
But there are multiple times where Chris Evans either, the scene is cut entirely, or he just like stops himself. It's like a funny TikTok skit.
What the fuck?
What in the actual fuck?
Yeah.
It's also the fact that it really feels like you can't figure out what it wants to be. Or it seems to borrow from a lot of other franchises. I mean, probably the most heaviest would be Fast and the Furious, and that's probably because the guy who wrote this wrote 8 fucking Fast and Furious movies. It's also got like these fantasy elements to it, but they're not like...
Very like Narnia and, what's
Narnia,
the Golden
Hellboy,
Compass or whatever
the Golden
it is.
Compass, stuff like that, but it's explained in this really like bleak, non-whimsical sort of way. Yeah. Everything's just not scientific, but just very rote and like, oh, here's the...
It was a very not Christmassy Christmas movie.
No, ironically, for this movie, not cheery, but dreary. Yeah,
You're right, though. There were Christmas, like, themes to it.
Yes,
like, obviously, like...
trappings.
Yes, you've got, Christmas shoppers, presents, whatever. But it wasn't Christmas. I didn't watch it and go, wow, I feel in the holiday spirit.
Yeah, I felt like, which one's Hobbs, which one's Shaw?
Yeah.
I feel like, that's basically how I felt watching it. Like, this is just a Fast and the Furious movie that they threw some crap onto. And they just couldn't settle on which elements of which movies they wanted, how far to push it in one direction or not. And so it just ends up being this like vague, Christmassy kind of scented movie that's mostly just like resembled not Marvel. I didn't get Marvel so much as I got like the DCEU movies. The biggest problem in my opinion was
The Rock.
Well, The Rock is bad in it, but both guys are bad in it. Chris Evans and The Rock are not good in it.
We know that they can both be very funny. They're both very good actors, but I think if either one of them had been swapped out for someone else, like we said earlier, a Sean William Scott for Chris Evans, a Mark Wahlberg for The Rock.
The issue is they're like playing the wrong characters. Chris Evans is supposed to be like a fish out of water in this scenario, but he just like, oh, I guess Christmas is real, whatever. Santa's
also,
real.
Did we just save Christmas?
Yeah, hold on. Also,
he just adapts immediately.
Biggest point of contention for me. At the beginning of the movie, when we have fat little Jack O'Malley, he's exposing his cousins to the fact that Santa's not real, and he pickpockets from his uncle to get the keys to open the closet. It's like, we're being duped, being led on.
We're being played.
Santa's
That's how
not
I felt
real.
watching this movie.
And then 30 years later, it's never spoken about again in this movie.
No.
He's literally listed in the Wikipedia page as a Santa skeptic, a lifelong Santa skeptic. It is never brought up again. No. And when he's told that Santa's real, he's like, oh, so you're telling me Santa's real?
He's got this little bit of skepticism initially, but then...
Santa Claus has been kidnapped?
For the rest of the movie, he just accepts his fate, and then by the end of it, it's just, oh, okay, Santa's real.
Sure, we're on a sleigh ride.
It should be a movie where, like, Chris Evans is, like, he should be the straight man in this, and The Rock should be the comedic character, even unintentionally, but it's just a movie with, like, 2 straight men in it, and no comedy at all. Nobody wants to be funny. The Rock is unwilling to... do anything that isn't like a sarcastic line. He can't joke around or be jovial. He can't like embarrass himself a little bit anymore. So it ends up being just this humorless affair. And
even if Chris Evans' character wasn't like funny necessarily, but it really leaned into like he made himself a crazy delinquent father by being so consumed by finding out if Santa was real or not. That could explain why he was getting coordinates for the North Pole. I know he didn't know in the movie, but that could explain it.
It needed to be somebody who can play wacky and zany for that kind of character, if you want to go in that direction. Or you have him be just the serious guy and The Rock is comedy. Danny DeVito, yes, that would have been... We'd have to set like the flashback scene would be in 1956.
Played by Danny DeVito, they just CGI'd his face.
Yeah, they aged progression. Danny DeVito's old man body, but like a child's face. I like what you're cooking here. I like this idea. Yeah, it's just everything else is so fucking humorless. And you really start to wonder why was this made? Who made it? What was the purpose? And that's when I started to do a little bit of the research on this, because you have that other stuff like that was brought up in the process of the production of this movie, the leaked anonymous sources saying that The Rock was 8 hours late to filming, and sometimes he didn't even show up at all, and when he was there, he was peeing in water bottles to quote-unquote save time.
How many water bottles do you think he had to pee in to save 8 hours of time every single day for 4 months, which is how long it took them to film?
I don't know, but I think that's a question for
Someone do the math on that.
The writers for this movie probably would have figured that out for you. He filled up 43,000 piss bottles. So the director for this movie was a man named Jake Kasdan, who has some other credits, but his last 3 movies have all starred Dwayne Johnson. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Jumanji, The Next Level, and Red One. The screenplay was written by Chris Morgan, who, again, has a handful of other credits, but is predominantly known for the Fast and the Furious franchise, and he's written like 8 of these fucking movies. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The original story idea was conceived of by Hiram Garcia, who is Dwayne Johnson's ex-wife, Danny Garcia's brother. He's also the president of production for $7, which is Dwayne Johnson's production company. And so when you start to look into some of this stuff, I don't want to use the word fraud or scam, but it feels to me like they're kind of doing what Adam Sandler was doing around the time of making like the Jack and Jill movies, where it's like, let me take my friends and my wife to Hawaii, and we're going to spend $60 million on this movie, and I'm going to get everyone a paycheck. And when you think about that stuff, and you factor in the ballooning production costs because of his tardiness, and then the massive salary he had, which is $50 million, and you compare that to like the other people in this movie, like even Chris Evans, Captain America, he only made $15 million for this role.
15?
15.
Are you kidding me?
No, The Rock got paid 3 times more than him, or more than 3 times. And then when you look at some of the other people, I think Lucy Liu was paid $850,000. J.K. Simmons got like $700,000, and these are obviously reported. But if you think about it, The Rock is getting paid almost 60 times more than these other people. And there's no way...
Chris Evans was Captain America for what, like 8 fucking movies?
Part of some of the biggest franchises in movie history. And it's just ridiculous. And so it does make you wonder what's going on here. Then when you get into stuff like the budget of the movie and how, again, it's all reported, but $200 million to $250 million, and 100 of that, $50 million going to The Rock's salary, and then another $50 million potentially going to cover all of his unprofessional behavior, screwing up the timetable of the movie, it feels really egregious.
Especially when you consider that the movie didn't even break $200 million in sales.
Yeah, it has yet to turn a profit or anything. It's obviously a bomb, and it's hard to look at it and say it's anything but The Rock's fault here, even if not maybe him. I mean, him directly for sure, causing massive ballooning to the budget of the movie, but also it's hard to look at the movie and not see his fingerprints all over kind of ruining it.
I don't get how you can do that when you're someone who talks about being like the most professional person in the room, being the best person in
hardest
the room.
Worker in the room.
Hardest worker in the room, thank you. And just being a man and being about your business. Then you have so many different fingers in different pots with this. So many
fingers in different
people.
pots, Ricky?
Oh my god, it really was. Shut up. But you have all these different people that you're connected to. With nepotism.
Irons in the fire.
Yes, irons in the buckets. But you have your former brother-in-law, all these different little production companies, things that you're part of, and then to still act like that.
Yeah.
And to be paid many times more than what the rest of the cast and crew. He made more money than the rest of the main cast and crew combined.
Not just more money, multiple times over. I mean, even if you factor in the other people's salaries, still 3 times more. It's ridiculous. And you're right about it being nepotism. The thing that I thought about when I was like kind of contemplating this movie is if any of Dwayne Johnson's kids decide they want to act, we're going to have like some kind of fucking unbearable, like Willow Smith fucking, they're going to be inescapable. They're going to be in everything. You're not going to be able to go to a movie without one of them being in something.
Dude, if they keep making like the live action Moana movies, some of his kids are young enough like that they could be in those as like little baby Moana friends and stuff.
It's all very suspicious to me. And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, it feels like this movie just was made kind of as let's have another The Rock project. And what we got was, I think, the second in like last 2-3 years where The Rock is just not panned out. You had the Black Adam not too long ago. That was a flop. This is a flop. And it makes you wonder, what is the future for The Rock? Is he going to be this movie star anymore? Is he just going to show up and stuff? I think the era of The Rock being a massive multi-million-dollar movie star is kind of dwindling.
I believe that may be exactly what he is called on his Wikipedia page.
Dwindling?
No.
And on that bombshell, as always, I want to thank you for watching the video as well as liking, commenting, and subscribing. I know it was something new and scary and different, but I think you have to try these things as a creator. Otherwise, you end up stagnating and just making the same content over and over again. If it turns out that people like this kind of content, it will probably be something I add to my repertoire, especially when it comes to things like movie reviews or comedy. That said, I will probably tone the editing down. As I got towards the end of this review, I realized that I had gone a bit overboard, when what I was aiming for was something more podcasty and easier to put out there. Either way, I hope you enjoyed it. Finally, I want to say thank you to my supporters on Patreon, who help make these videos possible. Thank you, Squirt, Rusty Shackelford, Jackson, Fightback CBD, Mike Roballs, Bone CK, Mango Saver, Devil Stick Disco, Mad Max Burger, Gaius Anisha Patton, Scott Richmond, Random Candor, Fuzzy Yannis, Dot Old Neon, Timothy Lee Peterson, Julius Caesar Has Jungle Fever, Firebrand, Quasi, Sneps, Alex, Major General John Pope, and Neem.